welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're back over on the YouTube account and we're going to be breaking down, amazing enough, it is already the February tier list. So kind of crazy. Now, in addition to this one, we did add two pretty solid heroes. Number one being Zora. Now, of course, we are seeing this hero a couple different places within AFK Arena, even looking at the Treasure Scramble, looking at the Cursed Realm and the Nightmare Corridor. Zora is showing up a couple different places. We also did have the addition of Scion. So overall, this hero, again, requires a pretty decent build, damage dealing, but overall still seeing a lot of utility with this hero, even though very new. We are seeing it again, Cursed Realm, Nightmare Corridor, Treasure Scramble. We are seeing utility with this hero. So let's hop over and break down this tier list. All right, guys, so here we have it, tier maker for February of 2025. So starting in the top, like we always do with our SSS tier, which is kind of crazy because this has been pretty much since release. Liberta has not been dethroned yet, and the same with the Awakened version of Athalia. When we start looking at the utility of these two heroes, there is not a place that Liberta is not being used, even thinking of campaign formations, thinking of Temporal Rift, thinking of the Cursed Realm, the Nightmare Corridor, the Treasure Scramble. Every single place this hero is still being used, which is crazy. That is still producing an incredible amount of damage. Power creep doesn't really seem like it's affect the attack rating and the damage output, but overall still a very strong hero. Same with the Awakened version of Athalia. This is a hero that can go into any formations. Still crazy amount of utility in there with this hero. And of course, burst damage, PvP wise, does super well and also very key to a lot of our top tier formations. Then we look at Lucilla. Now this one, I thought she would fall down quite a bit in the tier list, but as we know, the Liberta running with Lucilla together has been incredibly popular, especially because once you kill her, she does come back to life and she keeps Liberta up and alive. Definitely a hero that, again, I thought was going to have a little less utility, but is still holding strong. Now with the Draconic heroes, we have Lan. Lan is still one of the super top tier, again, utility-wise, used pretty much everywhere in AFK Arena. Does require a little bit of a build out, and of course is super expensive. When you think about the Draconic insignias, it is by far the most expensive heroes in AFK Arena as it sits today. Still hoping that Dawn makes some adjustments and Lilith makes some adjustments to actually give some viability and making them easier to acquire. Then we look at Demia, and again, a lot of players are saying Demia, a lot of utility, a lot of damage, and overall, if we did not have the Mahira collection with her, the utility in her, in my opinion, would be much lower, but as it sits today, throwing that level 2 collection on there makes a huge difference with survivability, and of course, when you're starting to look at some of the damage dealers, or some of the heroes that die out pretty fast, she can keep that from happening, which again, makes her very strong. Then we look at Aurelia. When you look at a buffer, when you look at someone who is going to amplify damage, she does it very well. Now, of course, to get the full utility out of her, she does require a plus 40 signature item. So a little bit higher in the build with signature item, but overall the utility for this hero is kind of incredible to see with just kind of a transition, like a harvest hero for Thanksgiving or right around Thanksgiving. But a lot of players, again, didn't think she'd have quite the utility that she does, but absolutely dominating in this top SSS tier. Then we have Lavatoon, still holding very strong. And of course, what's special about him, comes on, breaks out the stage, does the buffing, does everything he needs to. Some formations, he's doing quite a bit of damage, but overall, bringing and amplifying the damage that heroes do in formation is what makes Lavatoon work incredibly well. Then we have the Awakened version of Leica, still in the top tier, only 2 Awakened heroes. Leica is still very unique in how she does the energy, the shielding, the delay to coming in, the damage she's putting out. Everything that you want to see in a hero is built in Leica, which is the reason why she still remains in that top tier. Now, looking at the SS tier, we have Rendell. Now, this hero has been really, for the primary 4 factions, this hero has shown super impressive utility, being used a ton of different places, even being best in slot in a lot of places. And overall, if Lilith remembers that we have the primary 4 faction heroes, because it just seems like it's Celestial, it's Hypo, it's Draconic, it's Awakened, it's everything except the primary 4 factions, because you see these heroes start sliding out of here. But of course, they are the cheapest hero to build in AFK Arena because we have the desired hero summons. Then we have Rimuru in here, still again, utility-wise, not as the damage, but as the buffer in those formations, works incredibly well. Amelia still holding strong with the instant crowd control, which of course can be devastating in formations. Actually use her in a ton of different places right now. Not only the instant crowd control, but also the energy regeneration makes a really big difference. Now, Jerome still, again, as a buffer, not only in the light bearer formations, where he does have a big amplification for light bearers in general, but still thinking of the awakened version of Belinda, even looking at the awakened version of Lucius, two super strong light bearers still running him, but he's also being used outside of heroes that are light bearer specific, being used in a lot of different formations. Again, utility wise, still having a lot of dominating utility there. Then we have the awakened version of Belinda, still again, a lot of formations. Seeing her still used. The big thing is she has kind of fallen off within the treasure scramble. She's been kind of replaced at that point, but that is only in case if you have every single hero built. That is where she is seeing a lot of utility. It is if you don't have the awakened version of Lucius, the formation it's dropping back to is the awakened version of Belinda, and this hero still doing incredibly well. Then we have Shuna as a support hero, as a buffer, incredibly well. Then we look at our third original 4 faction heroes. Ivan still, again, any formation you can drop Ivan into does kind of crazy. And if you're newer to AFK Arena, the combination of Ivan together with Rendell or Randy has been super broken. That is what players are running. And of course, the combination of those two through campaign formations mean that you do not have to build out or you do not have to garrison Rem. That, of course, the combination of Ivan Rem was very broken. But as of right now, Rendell or Randy has really replaced that formation, working super, super well in conjunction with Ivan. Then we have Gavis, mitigation, very, very strong with this hero, keeping other heroes alive, including the awakened version of Belinda and Lucius in formations. Then we have Palmer out here. Palmer, of course, crit damage, crit amplification. Not very many heroes who does what he does with the ability to raise the top end damage even higher. And I think in the future, again, we're probably going to see a little less utility from him. But again, if you don't have every single hero built within AFK Arena, has a ton of utility, has a lot of gameplay if you don't have everyone built. Then we have Aethys, pure tank, just an absolute crowd control monster. Love him in formations. He is able to lock down formations 100% with crowd control, which is crazy. And of course, has the survivability to really do that. Then we look at Nox. This is another one, Treasure Scramble, super hard to kill in the SEAL team where he's being run. But when you start thinking about the buffing in all of the other game modes, he is being used in a ton of formations. I think every iteration of the Curse Realm and the Nightmare Corridor, he is being run in there. Then Zora. So this, of course, is the not the newest, but the second to the newest that we have seen when you think of game modes being run in a ton of different content, used as a primary damage dealer. Now, as a primary damage dealer, Zora does require a pretty significant build out to amplify the damage she's doing in those formations. So if you're looking to really min-max damage in there or really push the leaderboards, she does require a pretty big build out. And when you build her out with all the stats, her damage is going to go much, much higher. Then we have Rem. Rem, again, is another one where if you're not running Lucius, if you don't have Skyland, Rem is still a very viable run. Running Rem together with Ulna is, again, super strong to run together, work incredibly well. Now, Naruko is another one, the tiny tank, which still has a lot of buffs, has a lot of utility and formation, still being run in a couple different places, has Nadia, has shielding, has pretty much everything that you'd look for. Now, the Awakened version of Thorin, and of course, the Awakened version of Chimera, being run in a few different formations, even being run in PvP. Absolutely, both of them are required. They are super strong awakened heroes. And even thinking of the tier list itself, they have really stapled and made a good place within the tier list, having a lot of utility in a bunch of different game modes. Chimera is very unique, similar to the awakened version of Laika, that she is very unique in what she does and how she does it fundamentally, being a tank, but also being one that, you know, splits the spirits, energy disintegration, everything else that she brings. Then we have Skyland. Now, of course, if you're thinking of Draconic heroes, Lan is the one to build. Players have built Skyland. Now, Skyland has an incredible amount of damage that he can put out very, very fast. However, again, the sheer cost of building Draconic heroes is kind of crazy high. So again, not seeing a ton of utility out of there because of the cost of the hero. But if you have him, absolutely use him. He goes best in slot in a lot of different places. If you don't, heroes are supplementing and the awakened version of Iran in his place if you do not have Skyland. Then we have Scion. So Scion, of course, the newest hero that we had to AFK Arena. But when you start looking at wheel formations, when you start looking at best in slot, he is best in slot in a multitude of formations, Cursed Realm, Nightmare Corridor. Even looking at the Treasure Scramble, this hero's damage is super high and it happens super fast. We didn't think overall that he would be used in the Nightmare Corridor, but he actually is because the damage is ramping up very quick. Now he does have to have that 9 of 9 furniture. I haven't built. I do not have 9 of 9 furniture on there, and we're not seeing the same utility than we did with essentially testing out the copy because it is not as high. You got to get that furniture built as well as the hero itself. Then we have Misha. Misha, of course, runs in conjunction with the awakened version of Iran. Works super, super well with the Wilder formation. Even thinking of Leica together with Iran with Misha, super strong. Now, one thing to note with her is the collection needs to be very high defense. The higher the defense, the better, and higher, and really ultimately, the more utility she's going to have within formations, which is the same with the awakened version of Lucius. Since his defense turns into attack, if you're building up a collection with a ton of defense on there, it is essentially through his SP effect going into attack, which makes a huge difference. Now, Eugene still seeing again formation being used in a couple different formations. The awakened version of Iran is the sub for land, or excuse me, for Skyland. But overall, still having a lot of formations with crowd control, and he is actually running together very well with Aethys. The ability to essentially crowd control with Iran, crowd control with Aethys is sending his damage through the roof. And of course, the entire teams are locked down the entire formations. Then we have Gwen in here, starting to come down the tier list a little bit, but still does a lot of very big burst damage. And Trishia, I feel like this is one that probably should be removed or moved down the tier list. But overall, when you look at her combination with the original version of Baden and a few other heroes, it's kind of broken where she's still working. But again, I feel like this needs to be updated. That some of these need to be adjusted maybe a little bit. I'm not sure how much, but overall, I can't see her staying in the S tier list or the SS tier in probably the next list. I'd say she's going to be down a tier. Now, looking at the S tier, these are the heroes that provide pretty much all of the support for the heroes built above. We still have the Chad right here, Vathiel, super strong when it comes to buffing, also does a considerable amount of damage. If you haven't built, honestly, in a lot of these right now, I wouldn't focus on building in this S tier just for the simple fact we know new heroes are coming. A lot of these heroes are being replaced. And if you're newer to AFK Arena, most of these heroes are not going to be prevalent within the next couple months. But we do have Adrian Elise. This is another hero that does require the plus 40 signature item. Then we have Hildwyn. Hildwyn's still seeing a lot of utility with the shielding aspect and everything else that he brings to combat. Even though he's a mage, has a ton of support aspects. And then, of course, the awakened version of Sophia, the second awakened support hero that we did see. Still, again, a lot of utility with Mauler heroes, a lot of utility in different formations where you want to keep some heroes alive. The awakened version of Baden, this one, again, sliding down the tier list because it seems like he's been kind of replaced in a lot of formations. Used to be best in slot within the Cursed Realm. That was taken away. Used to be pretty solid within the Treasure Scramble. That has been kind of taken away. So I feel like, again, a couple of these are going to slowly come down these tier lists. Same with the awakened version of Solus, not seeing the utility with this hero anymore. Short of probably a one-off formation that we're still seeing it with the sprites or with the ads. Nyla, the exact same. I believe there is still one formation in the Nightmare Corridor. She's still being run, but only one place in its entirety. Tamris we're seeing every now and then for crowd control. Again, enthusiasm buff, very good buffer, even though that's not what he's designed for. Still does work very well. Now, Kelthin is another one, unfortunately, that we're not seeing utility really much at all anymore. Short of the tower formation, I probably wouldn't focus on building him just because with future releases, he's just going to essentially move further and further down the tier list. That is going to have kind of less and less utility. Then we look at the awakened version of Antandra, kind of a niche hero that we're seeing again best in slot every now and then. If you can merc a copy of her, probably a good choice versus building her. Villanelle still being used in a few different places, was run for a little bit with the awakened version of Shamira, and the same thing with Lady Simona. But as of now, I'm not seeing her in formations as much. Looking at Rosaline, this is one that can boost up a lot of different heroes, but now it's almost gotten to the point where she used to run with the awakened version of Belinda all the time. It doesn't seem like we're seeing her in those formations anymore, that it's kind of gotten to the point where the support heroes are doing so much more damage than what she's bringing to the addition of the awakened version of Belinda, that it's kind of a moot point at that point. Ulna, still one other challenger story you absolutely need to build when you look at how the hero fundamentally works. Keeping a secondary hero alive, such as Iran or Skylin, that is where she shines, and that is where it will not go away, regardless of the power creep, regardless of what happens. She provides the immunity to the damage dealers, which of course can make their damage go through the roof. Rain still has her 30% buffer. Lady Simona, energy disintegration. Goran, I thought again, he might come up a little bit higher, but ultimately he's been in the S tier since release. He does require that 9 of 9 furniture as well to get the energy buff out of there, which is very similar. And he does very similar to what we see with Rowan with the energy potion. And unfortunately, and again, with Rowan, if you're a newer player to AFK Arena, Rowan had a ton of utility. Looking even at substitutions, Rowan still does work pretty well with the energy regeneration and, of course, the damage mitigation. Mortis still kind of a one-hit wonder, seeing him every now and then. Scarlet still Nightmare Corridor burst damage. Same with Iran, burst damage. And then, of course, Silas as a buffer. Now, the rest of the tier list, I just wanted to show you right here in the A tier. Right here is Shell tier. So overall, guys, when you look bigger picture at AFK Arena, we thought Shell tier would have a lot more utility. Only place we're seeing her right now is PvP. When it comes to Cursed Realm, Nightmare Corridor, not being used. A lot of even formations, campaign formations, couple other places, I am not seeing her at all being used. I don't know if maybe it's too early. And honestly, because she's not released right now to the general public, the only way you can use her is for that short-lived trial version, or if you did purchase her. So we could see a lot more utility when she gets the exchange, when we see the global release for her. And ultimately, Albedo is the exact same. Albedo is in this A tier as well. So again, it's going to make a difference, and we're going to have to see exactly where she does come up and where we do see the hero. Now, you'll also notice in here, Milion is in here. We have Kregor in here. A couple of our Draconic heroes are falling a little bit down the tier. And then, unfortunately, down here, still in the C tier, is Ainz. Even with the buff, it wasn't enough to make a difference in any game mode at all. Unfortunately, I was hoping that Ainz, when we seen the update to all of the skills and abilities, that his utility would be a lot higher. He'd end up in like that SS tier, which he used to be the absolute top tier. But as of right now, even the damage that he's putting out, way too delayed. There's no cheat death. It's not as much damage as it needs to be. They could definitely tune him up a lot higher, and it would make a difference. Then, of course, we have our bottom D tier right down here, which these are heroes I probably wouldn't even use for tower formations at all. And even when you start getting to 2 and 3 tower formations, it is going to fall in most of this like B and C tier are the heroes you're going to be filling. But focusing and building any of these heroes out that fall in either of these two tiers, not really worth it at all. And even when you think of, building out faction heroes, even if you go down, to the A level of building out a tier list or building out your wish list very early, you can definitely fill it with a lot of heroes that have a lot more utility. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the tier list. And as always, thank you guys for watching.